Support for Arkansas Week provided by the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, the Arkansas Times, and Little Rock Public Radio.
And hello again, everyone, and thanks very much for being with us. Election 24 is upon us, perhaps you noticed, and between now and Election Day, Arkansas PBS will be delving into many of the races that bear watching. Debates with candidates for Arkansas's 4 congressional seats begin October 7th right here. But first, in this edition, what's long been a staple of Arkansas Week coverage of voting in our state with the assistance of the University of Arkansas's Cooperative Extension Service. It is the UA's Public Policy Center that's become the standard for objective, straightforward, dispassionate analysis of the questions put to voters either by the General Assembly or by citizen organizations. Now, at this hour, there are 3 such questions on our November ballot. And to dissect them, we welcome once again Dr. Stacy McCullough, Director of the Public Policy Center, and her associate there at the center, Kristen Netterstrom Higgins. Thank you both very much for coming. It seems like just yesterday that you were here. I think it's been a couple of years.
It doesn't feel like that to us. It's a long process to get here every year.
Well, it is. And before we go any further, why don't we talk about the voter guide, which is, your work, and it went up, I think, online just, last evening.
That is right. So really, every time an election ends, so in 2022, Kristen immediately gets started on working on the issues for 2024. As those become more apparent, as the legislature passes whatever they're going to refer to voters, as the citizen petition process gets going, we track those, we start collecting data, trying to analyze things, and then as we get closer to the election, once we know what we think is going to be on the ballot, then we actually start really getting into the details, putting together our voter guide. This is a printed off copy. This is our printed off copy.
Please, yeah.
It is hard copies will be produced and in our county extension offices, hopefully by early election. But last night, Kristen got this hot off the press and got it posted onto our website, and so it's there for anybody to look at.
Well, look at you. Now, this is, Kristen, this is tricky ballot issues and trying to basically project what may make it onto the November ballot, and even then, what may be counted.
Right, because we have a lawsuit challenge against issue 2 and then issue 3, which is also a citizen initiative. It's still being reviewed by the Secretary of State's office. So we put out our voter guide before, the official ballot is out there.
Yeah.
All the counties have them. They're programming their machines, but whether votes will count for issue 2 or issue 3 remains to be seen as of today.
Because getting the ballots out can't.
They can't wait.
Wait, yeah.
Right, because they're going overseas, they're going to military members, they're going to absentee ballots are already hitting the mailboxes. So the ballot is out there. But as far as the 3 issues that are on the ballot this year, issue 1 is the one that is for certain. And we're waiting to see about issue 2 and issue 3.
Yeah, sure. Before we go any further, let's refresh the electorate's memory. How do ballot issues become ballot issues? Stacey?
Sure. So there's 2 ways. So the first way is through the state legislature. The General Assembly, in the odd-numbered years, so when they have their general session back in 2023, legislators propose ideas for things that they may want to refer to voters. They then have to whittle those down because they are limited to 3 issues that they can refer to voters. This year they only referred 1, which is a little unusual. Usually there are more than that. The second way that things show up on the ballot is through the citizen petition process. So people can propose ballot titles. They have to go to the Attorney General's office, who has to basically certify that the ballot title and the popular name are not misleading, that they encompass the major points that are in the proposal. Once that's approved, then they can start collecting signatures. And to get on the ballot, there's a pretty high threshold. You have to have enough signatures representing 10% of the people that voted statewide in the last gubernatorial election. So this year, that's 90,704 signatures. And then they have to have signatures from at least 50 counties. And within each of those 50 counties, it has to equal 5% of the people that voted in that county for the last governor's election. election. So there's a process for that. Once those signatures are gathered, it goes then to the Secretary of State, who is in charge of validating all those signatures, making sure that they are legitimate voter signatures that can be counted. And then once they have passed that threshold, then it gets to the ballot.
Let's get started. Issue 1 that's on the ballot now, and that involves fairly simple, fairly straightforward, lottery scholarship money.
It is straightforward. It's something that is coming from the legislature, and it has to do with the lottery funds that voters approved back in 2008. Voters said, yes, we'll do, lottery scratch-off tickets in Arkansas. And the revenues from that went to 2-year and 4-year public and private universities in the state for scholarships or students attending those schools. Right. So issue 1 is a proposal to expand that to include vocational and technical schools. So it would allow the legislature to pass additional laws about where those scholarship funds could go. So they anticipate that they would have if this were to pass, that they would come back in a future session, pass a law saying that scholarship funding from the lottery can also go to those technical and vocational schools and institutes.
Yeah. Organized pros and cons?
There's not any organized opposition to this, and the sponsor said that this is an equity issue, that it's making right something that they should have done before. Because it's a constitutional amendment, the legislature couldn't just pass a law saying we're going to use lottery revenues, and so they have to come back to the people and ask them to change the state constitution to allow that shift or that change, that expansion of scholarships.
And it goes back to the fact that we had to amend the Constitution to even allow a lottery.
Right. And what's interesting about this year is all 3 proposals actually have to deal with something that voters have already decided in the past 15 years. So these are relatively recent constitutional amendments that they're being asked to change again.
Yeah, so really no organized pro or con.
There's no organized opposition. There's nobody registered with the Arkansas Ethics Commission supporting it, but it was, a bipartisan bill in the legislature.
Yeah, essentially this would, in addition to what it would do immediately, would grant the legislature more flexibility, or grant the legislature flexibility in the application of lottery proceeds.
Correct. So in addition to your junior college and your 4-year college, that there could be students going to the technical and vocational institutes in the state that could apply for these scholarships. And
we have another wagering sort of amendment, and that's issue 2 that's on the ballot.
Yeah, so issue 2, as Kristen said, also deals with changing an existing amendment in the Constitution. So Amendment 100, which was authorized by voters in 2018, basically created for or allowed for 4 casinos in the state of Arkansas. So 1 in Hot Springs, 1 in West Memphis, 1 in Jefferson County, and 1 in Pope County. If you've been following this at all since 2018, we have 3 casinos in Arkansas in Jefferson County, Hot Springs, and West Memphis.
Up and running.
They're going. People are frequenting those, as far as I know. Pope County has not been built yet. And so there have been several attempts to get a license issued in Pope County, the most recent one happening just earlier this year. The Racing Commission did approve a license for Pope County, but this proposal basically would stop that. This is a proposed amendment to take away any casino in Pope County in the state of Arkansas. So the license that has been issued by the Arkansas Racing Commission would be revoked. Any reference to a casino in Pope County would be eliminated from our state's constitution. But there's a second part of this amendment, or this proposal, and that's where it gets a little more complicated because, again, right now we have the limitation of 4 specific casinos in our state. If in the future there was another constitutional amendment passed that would allow for additional casinos in the state of Arkansas, that's when the second part of issue 2 would kick in. And that would say that the quorum court in a county where that casino should be located would have to call a special election, and that casino would have to be approved by the voters in that county. So that's a distinction between what's currently in the Constitution and what the supporters of this want to be
a little complicated.
It is a little complicated, but we hopefully are explaining it in ways that people can understand what the elements are.
I don't know anyone who could do any better. But this is a very contentious thing, obviously, in Pope County.
Sure.
Can we describe who's for, who's against?
Yeah, so.
How does that break down?
Yeah, so obviously, because this is a citizen-initiated proposal, there are active supporters that have filed with the Ethics Commission to basically go out and support this proposal. And so they have several well-established arguments. If you've listened to the radio or television or social media or maybe text on your phone, you know that there are groups that are actively supporting this, and there are groups that are actively against this. And so their arguments are pretty well established. So the supporters essentially are saying that casinos shouldn't be forced on communities that don't want them. They cite the 2018 election that, again, because it was a statewide amendment, it had to be passed statewide by voters, but that voters within Pope County themselves, the majority of those voters voted against that. And so they want to basically put this requirement that in the future, if casinos are to be, additional casinos are to be built, that local voters would have to approve that.
Yeah.
On the opposing side, they're saying, you know, Arkansans have already spoken. The will of the voters in 2018 was we want 4 casinos in the state of Arkansas. They're also saying, you know, that they're pointing out that in our neighboring state, not very far from Pope County, there are casinos and gaming available to Arkansans to participate in. And so, you know, they're saying that this is being driven by outside interests that want to keep that money in outside states and not in the state of Arkansas.
And again, there is some question as to whether it eventually will, well, it's on the ballot, but whether it'll be counted.
That is true. Yep. So again, there is a lawsuit currently before the Supreme Court challenging whether this proposal should stay on the ballot. And so we don't know at this point what that outcome will be, but you will see it when you go to vote, and you can vote for it. But if between now and Election Day the Supreme Court strikes this, then that vote wouldn't count because it's really not an official proposal on the ballot.
Well, the same might be said for the third issue that's on the ballot.
Right. Issue 3, as of today, as I mentioned, we don't know if it's on the ballot or if votes are going to count for or against. They had to include issue 3 on the ballot because of those, early voting, absentee ballots and overseas ballots. Issue 3 is a proposal through the citizen initiative process that would amend the Arkansas Medical Marijuana Amendment, which voters approved in 2016. So again, another recent amendment that is being brought back to the voters with some proposed changes. And this proposal would affect the medical marijuana amendment that's in place, but it would also affect the state constitution. And that one, that part of it would say that the legislature could not make any changes or repeal any future constitutional amendments without another vote of the people. So if there's an amendment in place right now that they want to change, or if there's a future amendment that they want to change, they would have to bring it back to the people and say, these are our proposals. So it would require voter approval. So there's that aspect of issue 3. And then the rest of it has to deal with the medical marijuana program that voters approved in 2016. This is a vote that would, if approved, it would expand the medical marijuana program. It would say that additional types of healthcare providers could meet with a patient who wants to have a medical marijuana card from the Department of Health and say that, yes, you have a condition that would qualify or that we think you would benefit from the use of medical marijuana. There's 18 different conditions already in the Constitution from that 2016 vote. And so what this would do is it would say that the medical provider, whether that's a doctor, a registered nurse, a physician's assistant, or a pharmacist under this proposal, that any condition that you have that they think that you might benefit from the use of medical marijuana. So it wouldn't have to be one of the specific 18 conditions that are there right now. It could be any type of condition that you have. So that would expand access to the medical marijuana program. It would also allow people who have medical marijuana cards to grow a certain number of plants, marijuana plants at home. So if you have a card with the Arkansas Department of Health or you have a caregiver who's registered with the state, you could grow up to 14 plants at home, a variety of size. So from like seed to flower, so 7 smaller plants, 7 larger plants. And in addition to that, it would say that your medical marijuana card would now be valid for 3 years instead of 1 year. So every year right now, if you want to continue having a medical marijuana card, you do a new visit with the physician and a new application to the state. And so this would say you could do that every 3 years. It would also remove the $50 application fee that a person pays right now, and it would remove a background check requirement for a caregiver of a minor. And it would also say that if you wanted to use telehealth, because telehealth has expanded in the past couple years during COVID and post-COVID, that you could meet with that healthcare provider over telehealth for your first visit. Right now, you can meet with them for your follow-up, like for your re-registration, essentially. So it would expand that. It would allow people from out of state who have a medical marijuana card in their home state to come to Arkansas and buy medical marijuana from the dispensaries without having to go through the state process, without having to.
Reciprocity.
Right, exactly. So they don't have to see a doctor here or pay an application or fill out an application here. They could just use the card that they have.
Yeah.
It would also say that very formal language that exists regarding advertising restrictions, packaging restrictions, product design. It would take out that specific language and put back in that the state would have control over advertising and would have control over packaging. So right now there's a federal type of test to determine whether or not packaging is childproof. It eliminates or it strikes the name of that federal requirement and just says that the state could determine whether or not it's childproof or prevents someone from accessing too much of a product. Yeah. So in addition to advertising, the applications, allowing it at home, it would, there's so many, there's about 23 different changes here.
You might say number 3 is loaded, but.
Okay.
That's me, not you.
Yeah, that's exactly. And it would also allow the state to be sued. So for example, when we talk about sovereign immunity, right? So there's question about what the state can be sued over. It says that if the state doesn't enact the changes that are in this amendment, that the state could be sued for not implementing it. Yeah. And then finally, it recognizes that if the federal government ever decriminalizes marijuana use, that the dispensaries and the cultivators who currently have a license in the state, that they could then sell marijuana at wholesale and retail levels.
Yeah, admirable job, both of you. Let's emphasize the voter guide one more time, because it's a wonderful piece of scholarship. Really, truly it is. And
yeah, and as you heard, there's a lot of elements in some of these. So this is just kind of a overview of those. If you want to get more into the details, check out our voter guide. Go to our website, which is uaex.uada.edu/ballot. We've got web pages set up for each of the issues. You can see direct links to the actual ballot text and lots of additional information. So we encourage you to educate yourself and vote based on what you think is right for you.
Thank you as always, and I hope it's not another couple of years anyway before you, Stacey McCullough, Kristen Higgins, thank you so much for coming in again.
It's our pleasure.
See you soon.
Thanks. Thank you.
And we'll be right back. And as we mentioned at the top of the broadcast, the races on this year's ballot, races you need to watch. And a reminder that Debate Week begins October 7th here on Arkansas PBS. We'll have the candidates for all 4 Arkansas congressional seats, so you won't want to miss that. That does it for us for this week. As always, we thank you for watching. See you next week.
Support for Arkansas Week provided by the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, the Arkansas Times, and Little Rock Public Radio.